Happy 4th of July. I figured that for the most American holiday, I should cover the most American ship in War Thunder, the USS Atlanta. I'm also using a skin I created over the past week for this review, which I've put on live.warthunder for download. It's the camo scheme of the American Great White Fleet, and I think it looks pretty snazzy. There's also an accompanying skin for the USS Brooklyn, and I do plan to put this skin on more ships when I have the time to do so. For a bit of history on the Atlanta class was designed as a flotilla leader and anti-aircraft cruiser. 8 were built during World War II, being constructed from 1940 to 1944. The USS Atlanta and USS Juno were sunk during the Battle of Guadalcanal and were the only losses of the Atlanta class. The last of the Atlanta class ships was decommissioned by 1949. In War Thunder, the Atlanta's primary armament is 16 5-inch 38 caliber cannons split into 8 turrets. The layout has 3 in the front, 3 in the back, and 1 to each side. This means that at most you can get 7 turrets, or 14 guns, onto a single target at once. The 5-inch 38 caliber cannon has a base RPM of 22, slowing down to 15 RPM after firing 25 shots from each gun. At the highest RPM, the cannons can collectively fire 8,000 kilograms of shells per minute, giving the Atlanta an insane amount of firepower. The dispersion is pretty bad due to the longer engagement ranges of cruisers, but the main issue is the low velocity of the shells, resulting in a lot of drop and making aiming at long range very difficult. While these cannons do put out a lot of damage, they also struggle at long range, meaning that getting to close range should be a high priority in the Atlanta. The 5-inch 38 caliber cannon gets 4 shells: HE, Common, SP Common, and HEVT. The HE shells are great for fighting destroyers and some smaller light cruisers, though against anything with much armor, they don't deal much damage. The Common or SP Common shells are best against cruisers with heavier armor or for destroying ammunition racks. The Common and SP Common shells are very similar, with one having more filler and the other having more penetration. I personally take the SP Common shells to unlock later modification tiers earlier, but both of the shells are pretty similar in performance. Last comes HEVT, which is very useful against enemy aircraft. With the Atlanta's incredible fire rate, the HEVT shells can protect against aircraft at most ranges or angles, so it's worth bringing a few to fend them off. I'd recommend bringing a mix of mostly HE and Common or SP Common, along with a bit of HEVT for facing aircraft. It's good that the Atlanta's main guns are so effective against aircraft, as the secondary anti-air weapons leave a lot to be desired. The Atlanta has 3 quad-barrel Chicago pianos, with 1 behind the superstructure and 1 on each side of the bridge. The main weakness of these is their slow rotation and elevation rates, making them slow to respond to incoming threats. I'd recommend leaving them targeting both planes and ships, using them as an early warning system to alert you if anything is getting too close. Lastly for weaponry comes the Atlanta's secondaries, 8 Mark 15 torpedoes split into 2 quad launchers on either side of the ship. They're more effective than torpedoes are on many cruisers due to the Atlanta's very close engagement range, though I still recommend leaving them off as they serve as an external ammunition rack and make the ship more vulnerable to instant detonation. In survivability, the Atlanta is on the squishier side of cruisers. It has 623 crew and a 95mm anti-frag belt that makes it resistant to high explosive. The main issue the Atlanta has in survivability is its ammunition. Each main turret has a ready rack of 50 shells sat directly beneath it with roughly 30mm of anti-frag armor. While the anti-frag armor does protect it from HE splash damage, direct hits from AP will still detonate it, meaning ships with a large amount of shells per salvo like the Brooklyn and Suzuya are particularly good at detonating those ammo racks. Luckily, the main frontal ammunition has fuel tanks as protection, which makes that specific ammo rack much harder to detonate. The Atlanta's mobility is pretty average for a light cruiser. With a top speed of 60 km per hour and otherwise average stats, it's roughly the same as the Brooklyn and Cleveland. Not particularly impressive, but alright. The playstyle of the Atlanta relies entirely on the firepower of its main cannons. It's best to get into close range and negate the negatives of the low velocity and poor dispersion of the 5-inch cannon. Try to avoid direct fights with cruisers outside a range of around 5 km when possible. When facing destroyers and smaller vessels, spam as much HE ammo as possible to destroy their crew quickly. Against cruisers, use Common or SP Common ammo to disable their main cannons or detonate their ammunition. Long range is not the Atlanta's friend, so avoid it in all possible cases. For modifications, I'd recommend the following order. Toolset, Fire Protection, 5-inch SP Common Mark 46, Rudder Replacement, 5-inch AAVT Mark 31, Shrapnel Protection, Propeller Replacement, Ammo Wetting, and Engine Maintenance. For crew skills, prioritize Leadership, Main Caliber Reload Speed, Crew Interchangeability, Fire Prevention, and Ship Control. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Naval content.